92.5.
The Ghana Solar Support Project, the contractors under those projects, and we are hoping the PURC secures money to pay them as soon as possible, because this is a serious issue. A lot of them have people breathing down their neck to raise monies to be able to pay back the loans they use to execute this project. Now, so we are following this issue, and we'll be getting some updates on exactly what is happening in terms of payments to them. We hope the PURC secures. I can't say that enough, that the PURC secures money to pay them. And in addition, government too should pay contractors who have done their jobs, especially under the former government. It's been 2 years. And I'm hoping that they do that as soon as possible, especially for the sake of the banks whose monies are locked up in there. Well, once again, if you just joined us, it's the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. We are live on PAP MCGH on Facebook. My name is Sana Nobo. Show is produced by Patrick Asford Boedu, with a lot of help from the technical department, Richard Kwanzaa, Peter Kumasata, Mohamed Kabori, and also led by, of course, Alhaji Rashid Tanko, a big, and also a lot of support from our programs manager and the chief executive officer. So once again, welcome. And this morning, like I indicated, we are talking about the education sector. So 2 things happened this week, and so we'll be doing a critical analysis of the uproar in the education sector as government present the drafted public university bill to stakeholders, and the Deputy Minister of Education in charge of tertiary statement that the bill is to harmonize management of the universities and the reforms in, and also we are talking about the reforms in primary education. So 2 areas. That bill that is fast gaining grounds. A lot of controversy surrounding that bill. That was that the universities now have access to, that they said they are supposed to make inputs to. And the other one is the issue of the primary education reform that we've had. The controversial one has been the one with the new uniforms that are being introduced to give the junior high school students some psychological experience of being senior high school students. And so we'll be talking about that one. And then our second topic will be the ban on vigilantism, the dialogue, and specifically having to do with the bill. There were some moves made this week in terms of agreeing on the modalities for the forum that will be held, aimed at banning the vigilante groups. But even before that forum comes on, a bill has been submitted to Parliament. It was submitted under a certificate of urgency, which means that it will have been passed within 48 hours had the committee that was handling the bill not decided otherwise, agreed that some consultations have to be done. And so that is also another matter we'll be talking about, the developments on that front. If we have time, we'll also be talking about the commencement of work on the Sino Hydro projects. Well, this morning, I have in the studio Dr. David Percy, who is a student of history and politics, Dr. Augustine Tewia, member of parliament for Bia West and former executive secretary of the National Teaching Council, Comrade Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed, who is a former deputy trade and industry minister, and Emmanuel Wilson, who is director of communications of the People's National Convention. Once again, welcome to the show, and is sponsored by Franco Trading Enterprise, TT Brothers, Kulun Ghana Limited, and Mobile Author. Let me welcome my panelists for today. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah. So this morning we're starting the discussion with Comrade Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning to your cherished listeners. I think that I have and all of us in this country must be concerned about the issue we have at hand. It borders on the socio-economic transformation or development of this country. It borders on academic freedom. It borders on rule of law. It borders on the most important principle of good governance, which is separation of powers, to the extent that all of us must be interested in safeguarding the independence of certain state institutions, because failure to do so would have dire consequences for us. I have listened to the experts on my way here, when you played the interviews you had with some of them. I must say that they all made valuable contributions, and to a very large extent I agreed with most of the things they said. But I'm going to premise my discussion on this topic on the last interview you played with Professor Nana. The reason is that she has lived it. The reason is that she has indeed gotten engaged in both academia and in politics. The extent to which she would be an outstanding resource person when we need to talk about some of these policy issues. Remember that in every policy formulation, it could be even a bill sent to Parliament, which is a policy. It could even be a law that is passed, which is policy. And in every policy formulation, there are very important stakeholders. Stakeholders who would set the agenda for the policy to even be formulated. And the agenda must be anchored on some convincing reasons. It could be an outright new policy that government would want to formulate for the purposes of implementation to achieve an objective, or it could be a policy that is geared towards amending or realigning the existing policies to suit to the prevailing circumstances at any point in time. I get the sense, and you may agree with me, that this one is about realigning and amending an existing policy, which regulates the conduct of universities in this country, and to a very large extent regulates the production of human resource base of the country. Now, I agree with Professor Nana when she asks pertinent questions, that when this issue came up, that she's been wondering that what has occasioned the need for such a policy decision by government through the Ministry of Education. What has led us to this state? Is it a case that the existing laws or regulations indeed had problems? Is it a case that we are unconvinced with the purposes for which they were put in the first place to achieve? Is it a case that they are so dysfunctional that we need to come out and make those amendments, realignments, and sometimes changes? I think that these are genuine and pertinent questions that we must all ask, that nothing can result to nothing. Now, I get the sense that with the interviews that you had, I get the sense that largely many Ghanaians will agree that the purpose for this attempted imposition by government is because of what happened in the University of Winneba. And I think Prof asked another question. Is it the thinking of government or the thinking of all of us that the problems that happened at Winneba will reoccur? And if we have the thinking that this problem that happened in Winneba will happen again, then we would have described ourselves as failures, and particularly government. Now, is it a case that the problem that we are confronted, Winneba case was the first time we experienced, if you like, disturbances in academia, or particularly in our tertiary institutions? Mind you, we had a similar incident in University of Science and Technology. Happened to be my alma mater because I have pursued a course in the university too. And now she asked another pertinent question, that have we had any reports of the investigation that were told had been commenced into the unfortunate incident at the KNUST campus? Now, how long will it take government and the various stakeholders to inform the people of this country the investigation that was conducted and the outcome of those investigations and the possible implementation of the conclusions and decisions and recommendations made by people tasked with the responsibility to engage in such an investigation? I think that is barely 4 or 5 months, if I'm not mistaken, when we had that unfortunate incident. Nobody seemed to know anything. And remember that it took the Asante Hene intervention. I believe that what we experienced in University of Science and University of Winneba, perhaps we would have experienced worse in KNUST, because government clearly was bent on doing something that was unethical, that was unacceptable, and that indeed hinges on academic freedom. Sometimes I wonder the academia, the hypocrisy, that we experience in this country. Could you imagine this thing happening under NDC, and the revolt of the Ghanaians would have been uncontrollable? Could you imagine Now, if you look at the issues, for me, I'm going to focus so much on 3 main issues. I get the sense that there hasn't even been bill on the floor of Parliament. You interviewed somebody, I didn't know who the person was. He said his attention has not been drawn to any bill.
Yeah.
Who is the
Honorable Siaka Stevens,
the ranking member,
yeah,
right?
I think the chairman of
so I get the sense he's from MPP. He's a member of, and he said that he hasn't even seen any draft bill. He hasn't seen any bill. And we asked him whether he has seen any draft. He said no. He only knows what is circulated in the public domain. As to whether he is telling, and I don't want to believe he will be lying if he is the chairman and he hasn't seen any bill. If you are the chairman of education, committee in Parliament, and there's any proposed amendment to a bill such as this, you should be the first person, because once it is submitted to Parliament, it becomes the property of the Speaker, and it will be referred to the appropriate committee. And in this case, he would know. And on the fact that he is also a member of the ruling government, I believe that what the responsible governments and political parties in government do is that even if you have such proposed amendment which will come in the form of a bill, you would certainly have informed the chairman of the appropriate committee, because that is government's bill and you would want to push it through. Now, you ask a very intelligent question to which I would want to touch on. Any bill that is sent to Parliament comes with a memorandum, and in that memo indicates the purpose for that particular bill, the reasons compelling how they are, and why government thinks that there should be a law or an amendment of an existing law. We are yet to see any memorandum accompanying a bill. In fact, we haven't had any bill per the accounts given by the chairman of Education Committee. For some reasons, one would have said that we don't even need to engage in this discourse because no bill has been submitted or presented to Parliament. But be it as it may, knowing what MPP do and how they operate, it is just a clear indication perhaps they want to test the waters to see the reaction of the people of this country. But let us not be deceived into thinking that the purpose for this proposed amendment is for the good of any education or academia in this country. Rather, it's for the good of the NPP, and so myopic and so short-sighted that I don't think that it reflects the viewpoint of the entire NPP. Instead, it reflects the viewpoint of the king. I have said on this program, and I will reiterate the same point, we are not being governed in this country by just rules and regulations. We are governed in this country by the whims and caprices of the king. In this case, King Nana, that at any point in time, decisions must be taken. It doesn't matter how the revolt of the people of this country, as long as it inures to the benefit of him as the president, he goes ahead with it. Now, let's look at the reasons why government may want to pass this. And like I said, having established these principles, that there is no denying the fact that this thing has to do with the problems we had in University of Education Winneba, and perhaps the problems we had in KNUST. Now, let's interrogate the problems briefly. And I would leave that of KNUST because we haven't even been told the outcome of whatever investigation that we were told was going to be done on it. By University of Winneba, is it a case of the existing rules and regulations governing the conduct of the university, or is a case of direct political interference which was masterminded by leading members of the MPP? My good friend Afenyo Markins cannot be insulated from all the problems that we had in KNUST. They boasted about what they did. Now, I am asking Teu. Now, I have listened to the president of TEU, and I have no qualms at all with his position that he doesn't want to speak to any issue until they take a united position based on comments that are going to be made by various stakeholders within TEU. And I respect
that's UTAP.
Yes, sorry, UTAP,
yeah.
sorry. And I respect them because that is how responsible leadership do. That, of course, he can make his personal views known on that. But then he's still waiting for the contribution of UTAG members. But he made a point for me that was instructive. He said that based on the issues that have come up and various positions taken, that it is very clear what the interest and the viewpoint of many members who have spoken to this issue. Many members of UTAG, what they have said on this. And if I am not mistaken, the viewpoint of members of UTAG is that this decision of government is absolutely unacceptable. This decision of government is trying to impose their will on academia in this country, and that for me is a dangerous slippery slope that we must do everything possible to stop. But let's look at the content of the so-called bill, and I say so-called because we haven't had any bill presented to Parliament per the accounts given by the chairman of the Education Committee in Parliament. So everything we're going to do are going to be based on conjecture, to the extent that the conjecture would have a basis on the what is branded or brandish about the bill. Now, three very important issues that one can raise on this. One, they used to have 15-member, council. 15. Now, with the 15, I guess government was appointing 3. One, the chairman of University Council, per Article 70 of the 1992 Constitution, as indicated even by the former Minister for Education. Government has the right to do that. Now, and other 2 members. Now, if you look at the other members, the composition, they are not members who are selected by anybody, but representatives of various bodies that have the expertise, the capacity to ensure that education in this country thrives. And look, that is how those membership, TEU, I believe, has representative, UTAG has representative, and many other bodies. Now, if you look at the proposed amendments, government is seeking to reduce the number from 15 to 9. And out of the 9, government is seeking to appoint 5 of the 9. So what it means is that the 5 will be able to form a quorum. And the 5 can therefore take a decision that will be binding on educations and universities in this country. I mean, this is dangerous. You don't need any Archimedes or Aristotle or Plato to come and tell you that this is absolutely logical, except that government has an agenda. Now, what happened at University of Winneba was a direct government interference in academia, the extent to which some members of the same council were used for political expediency. And I believe that some of them will be licking their wounds today, because they'll be asking themselves that, yes, we did this, thinking that it was going to inure to our benefit. By the way, it has backfired. The very people who indeed masterminded the problems that we had in University of Education, Winneba, are now fighting among themselves. You have the current Vice Chancellor and my good friend, the MP for Winneba, Fenyo Markins, and the if you like, Minister at large, who has control over every procurement in this country, and who is the leader of the political terror of the MPP in the person of Kennedy Ajapong. This person was found there. What business did he have? So to be able to use that as a justification for this proposed amendment, for me, is completely unacceptable. So what government is seeking to do is to have control, so that while they have control, that government one would appoint the chair and appoint 4 additional people, making it 5, and the other various stakeholders would have the 4-member representation. Now, they can then form a quorum. Is government going to relinquish the responsibility and the power to appoint the chair of the University Council? If that is the case, then one may say that, okay, perhaps it makes some sense. But government is not prepared to relinquish that absolute power and responsibility to appoint the chair of the University Council. But he wants to have an additional authority to appoint 4 and reduce the number to 15. Now, if you have a chair who is appointed by the government, and that chair would have the power to convene council meetings, and the other 4 members are appointed by the same government, the chair can convene council meetings at any time. Even if the other 4 refuse to participate, they will still have the quorum. They will still form a quorum, and to take decisions that will be legally binding on the various universities and tertiary institutions. Particularly in this case, we are talking about public universities. So for me, that is dangerous. The other one has to do with the fact that there should be a pool at which every single student who wants to apply for university admission anywhere applies through the pool. And the determination of admission wouldn't be taken by the various universities. It will be taken by a so-called body. You know what it means? It means that the MPP wanted to even determine who is given the opportunity to pursue a university degree. That is what they are doing. Sometimes I ask myself, that do they have people who advise them? Sometimes I ask myself, do they think that they will be in power perpetually? Look, and I'll tell you this. Even if the NDC was in power and attempted this madness, this position I am taking would have been the same position. This position would have been the same position, and because this is complete madness. Why? If so, it means that what happens that you apply, even the determination as to which university you go must be determined by that body and not you, the student. So it has gone beyond just stifling academic freedom in our various universities and tertiary institutions and the kinds of decisions they take, to the extent that individual and personal liberties are even going to be attacked, that they determine which university. If I have the opportunity to apply for a university degree, I may decide, of course, in the public university, to apply at the University of Winneba, or apply at the University of Legon, a University of Ghana, or KNUST, or UDS, or Cape Coast. I can decide where I want to apply, or University of Allied Sciences. Now, what they are doing is that I may not even have the right to determine where I go. And you know why? The consequences of many people pursuing degrees and other courses, either not passing, or in fact they pursue the courses that they never like, is huge, because even parents determine what students do. Now, if the extent to which this is even condemned, why would government want to do that? And that, for me, is another danger. The third point has to do with the fact that decisions bordering on how these universities are run are decisions that are going to be given to the Minister for Education and the Minister of Finance. Now, the challenge that universities and other public tertiary institutions have been encountering has to do with funding. Remember, just recently, the Minister for Finance indeed indicated that they were going to ensure that an Auditor General, and clearly the Auditor General couldn't have made that statement without either the direct or tacit approval of the Ministry of Education, that lecturers who are lecturing in the universities on contract, you know, I think that a date has even been given, all have to go. And I ask myself, what have we done wrong? Go to the public universities, and I say this because I'm a student. Most, in fact, let me just say, I can't say all, most of lecturers who are teaching at the PhD level, as far as I'm concerned in my department, are all on contract. Are all on contract. And a lot of the lecturers teaching at the postgraduate level are on contract. Because you see, in academia, it's not like in politics. Tom, Dick, and Harry can get up and get into politics, where our constitution says that once you are above a particular age and you are of sound mind, who determines the sanity of your brains, you can contest to be elected as a member of parliament. In academia, not even only the universities, the longer you teach, the more experience you accumulate, and the more impactful positively it has on the people you are going to teach, and by extension on the socio-economic development of the country. The extent to which you would want to value experience, long service, that you have a lecturer who has taught a particular course time and again, and who has encountered all manner of students and their challenges and questions. And the more he or she encounters that, the more experienced he or she becomes. That you would want such people to go home under the guise of the fact that government is struggling to reduce cost, yet implementing policies that do not certainly make sense. Is that what this government is suggesting? That the Ministry of Education, once this bill goes through and is enacted into law, then comes out and say that yes, we gave these directives, even though we were scared to implement it, we have now been given the authority, the power by law, and that we want to take this decision at council, appoint a toothless dog, someone they can manipulate as council chair, and appoint other members and give them directive from the Flagstaff House. We want these decisions to be taken, and it ought to be taken. And you see what will happen to academia. Do you know that if you are pursuing a PhD course and you even want to write your dissertation, they may not give you to someone who has PhD. They would want to give you to someone who is a professor. You know, the only way universities can do that is some circumstances. If they have enough professors, they would give all PhD dissertations to be supervised by professors. But in instances where they do not have, that is where you may have a PhD holder who is supervising someone who is also writing a PhD. You think that the university, and our part of the world, of course, there are now very young lecturers who haven't reached the retirement age, who are professors. But how many are they? How many are they? Even in the most advanced democracies, the most recognized globally universities, Oxford, Cambridge, yes, mention them, they have lecturers, some of them 80 years, who are still teaching. You know why they are still teaching? The universities in those countries still consider the enormous experience that they have, that they would have loved that those people don't even grow old or die, so that they can tap into that. You don't have that. Now, this is another decision that this government wants to do. And in any case, look, if you are formulating policies for implementation, they are not just for political expediency. You formulate policies, you realign policies for the purposes of achieving an objective. Now, what feedback do we get which will inform those policy realignments? What feedback? The feedback certainly must not come from top to down. It must come from down to top. The implementers of the policies should be the best persons, the best group of people who should indeed make such proposals. You may do something that is politically correct. You may do something because you think that you are not violating any law. And I get the sense that under this government, they justify every immoral action on the basis of legality. That yes, we haven't violated any law. I listen to so-called seasoned journalists on some media houses, and they justify some of the wrongs of this government and say that no, the government has not violated law. I listened to someone whose name I won't mention, who justified PDA. In fact, who condemned PDA and said that yes, PDA was legally right, but it was morally wrong when he pretends to be a CPP person. Yet on the issue of certain government intervention, he says that what wrong has government done? Yes, PDA.
What legal wrong?
Yes, I'm saying what legal wrong? Yeah. Yet the same argument have been the argument some of us who would defend the decision to introduce PDA in this country have indeed advanced. Because the argument is the prevailing circumstances, the terror, political terror, which was inflicted on Ghanaian people. The extent that Nkrumah could not travel to certain parts of the country. And we associate, and I am just unfortunate that Comrade Kwesi Pratt is not here, made references to anti-terrorism laws today in the United Kingdom and the United States of America, justifying such laws. Now, those people who pretend to be CPP, and I have listened to them and I have audio recordings and videos where they said, yes, even though I belong to CPP, I just feel that the PDA was morally wrong. It wasn't right. Nkrumah could have done something different. Today, the moral defense of PDA is being thrown to the dogs. Now, people are no longer talking about moral actions taken by this government. They find solace under the guise of legality and say that this government hasn't done anything wrong. Yes, government may have the right to send a bill to parliament for possible, amendments to certain rules and regulations governing the conduct of universities in this country. The question we ask ourselves, it may be legally right. It may be within the purview of government legal rights to do that, or the president to do that. But is it morally acceptable? To what end? And I think that these are some of the questions we are asking. And once academic freedom is compromised, we are doomed as a state. They may take a decision and say that, okay, no lecturer should talk about any political thing in any campus. They can take such decisions. In this country, we had books that were written by Nkrumah, which was indeed gathered and burned on the campus of University of Ghana. And I remember when I was in Parliament, I made a contribution on the floor on JB Dankwa, by the way, who was a CIA agent. By the way, some of them who were charged, convicted, and prosecuted and convicted by President Nana Ado's father as terrorists. I made contribution, and one gentleman who is a journalist, I've forgotten the name, who lives in France, by the way, who doesn't even live in Ghana and doesn't appreciate the socioeconomic challenges we go through, wrote a long, thesis on Ghanaian Times, and attacked me. And in my response, I make references to the attempt that were done and some of the actions taken by the Buze Danko tradition, where they gathered books written by Nkrumah on the campus of University of Ghana and burned them under the supervision of the then Vice Chancellor. His children, and I'll point this, I have never stated this publicly, his children wrote to the president that they should sack me. They should sack me as a deputy minister because I stated a fact, that it was a fact that Nkrumah's books were gathered on the campus of University of Ghana under the supervision of the university's authorities there and bent. The sad aspect is that Nkrumah had tasked and that they should write an African encyclopedia. All those things were bent. His children had the effrontery because Nkrumah doesn't have children who will come and defend the legacy of Nkrumah. Now, if people could do that at that time, and they never had some of these powers, if we make a mistake and allow this unacceptable, this immoral, bill to pass through, then we are all doomed. And I must say, it is not about NDC, NPP. It's about academic freedom. It's about the survival of our education in this country. It's at the core. It's at the core of the human resource base of this country. That what the universities need is that provide the universities with all their financial needs. That is what they need. Ensure that water runs in our various halls. Ensure that you expand infrastructure. Ensure that lecturers are paid well and demand responsibility on them. You are not doing all those things. What you just need, because you have a dentist who is appointed as a minister for education, and his interest is to undermine academia. He's my very good friend, by the way. His interest is to undermine academia and engage in some of these immoral acts. It's just unacceptable. I know that dentists are meticulous, and I have had very good friends who are very, very meticulous. Sadly, these dentists of a minister of education indeed behave completely different, because doctors are people who re-examine things before they get engaged in it. And that is what I was expecting from my friend. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be the case. Either he is the one who is doing it without being properly informed, or once again King Nana is imposing his will, whims and caprices on the Ghanaian people, and not necessarily looking at things that would help education in this country. So I just want to call on every progressive mind in this country, including the silent majority within the NPP, who are indeed have expressed absolute repugnant of this attempted, imposition of government will on academia, to rise up, that they need to have the courage to speak out. We must have the courage to defend academia in this country. It doesn't matter where it is coming from. That the moral action is a moral right action is a right action, regardless where it is coming from. And a moral wrong action is a wrong action. It doesn't matter who says it. It doesn't matter the purpose. It is still morally wrong. So let us all rise up with zeal and fortitude to fight this. And I would challenge the minority that, knowing this government and this party, they will do everything they want to do. Even if they have the numbers and come to parliament, the minority should not even attempt to sit on this at the committee level, let alone even discussing it at the plenary. Let them go ahead and do what they... But I just know that inshallah, NDC comes back to power in 2020. By 2021, there are a lot of bills, there are a lot of laws that would have to repeal. There are a lot of things that would have to change, because they are just unacceptable and they are not in sync with our, existence as a people whose interest at any point in time must defend right and condemn wrong.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, for opening the floor with such fire this morning. Before I come to Comrade Wilson, a couple of messages have been coming through the PAB MCGH platform. Badasu Emmanuel says, good morning, Senna and your distinguished panelists. The genesis of the problem of education in Ghana is the technocrats at the Ministry of Education and the GES who are sitting aloof for a dentist to impose his whims and caprices on their technical know-hows. The education sector is basically the spine of the nation and not about uprooting teeth and fixing dentures. That's he sent that from Nkawi and Ashanti region. Musa Batwa in Kumasi says, Senna, the needless interference in our educational system is becoming unbecoming. This government have lost touch with the reality, hence have no tenacity to the unprecedented hardship we are going through. The public universities policy is bogus and an attempt to change lecturers. They should concentrate on curtailing corruption, which has virtually taken center stage, than unnecessary politicization of the education sector. Hashtag God Save Ghana. Naros Muniro only says he's watching from Taiwan. Good morning to you and thank you for your message. Kwesi Akili says, Radio Gold, the public university bill, which will become a law if it is passed, is a sign of democratic dictatorship by Nana Addo and his government. He is totally a failure. No wonder he was the only person called onto the bar on the 15th of June 1975, supported by his father, and 2 weeks after, another group was also called onto the bar. Honorable Ras Akito says, sends it from, I think it's a Cereso Adeja, says, what will students and teachers benefit from new uniforms? What kind of country are we living in? Are we in animals' kingdom where it is the fittest which survive, where anyone can wake up from his dream and implement anything that transpired in his or her dreams? It will come to a time where the youth will one day rise up and fight for what belongs to them if this kind of nonsense continues in the country. When will the Energy Ministry apologize to the public for the lies they spread across on the water pipeline, which they made to look like it was a gas pipeline? I can assure everyone that the MPP may change the name of the country before they leave office in 2020. Says greetings to Busumchi NDC Chairman Honorable Yao Berima and his entire executives. Well, he again comes, Honorable Ras Akito says, upon all the infrastructure development by President John Mahama in Kumasi, like KJTR Market, which can directly and indirectly affect the living standards of people, the people over there voted against him. The president should stop bragging as if he is the first person to construct overheads in Ghana. And we must also differentiate between interchange and overheads. Real economy is your pocket, but not GDP. Inflation and others are necessary figures that has value in books. Comrade Wilson.
Sana, thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me say a special good morning to first my senior comrades, yourself, to our number one producer, Pab. Let me say a good morning also to our listeners and our viewers across the country and across the globe. If you permit me, before I go to this issue of university bills, there are two things that are very dear to my heart, and this week it has been on me, and so I want to it's here. I've had opportunity of making it known on some other platforms, but I believe this is one of the biggest platforms anyone can ever have. There's an announcement from the Bank of Ghana indicating that from the 6th of May, there's going to be an upgraded cedi and currency notes. And the purpose is to, per their explanation, is to strengthen and to ensure that the security features that are on our notes currently meets up to the technological development that is going on across and in this country. It is quite worrying that, particularly as opposition political parties that are eager and preparing to take office come 2020, are not seen advocating and are not seen by the ordinary Ghanaian that we are championing their interests and we are protecting them and their interests. Senna, it is worrying because this announcement from the Bank of Ghana is clearly an avenue for this government to misuse the public purse. It is an avenue for this government to find a way of enriching themselves one way or the other. And you see, I have said that if just about 12 years ago we could spend $66.2 million on a so-called redenomination under an MPP government, and one of the reasons given was that the redenomination was going to have certain features that will strengthen security and ensure that our currency is strong. And if less than 15 years on, we come back and we are told that the security features of which we spent $66.2 million to develop could not travel for even a minimum of 15 years. By just 12 years on, we are going to spend an additional money or other unknown amount of money to upgrade our currency. Then I think that it is very important for us, particularly as oppositions, to stand up, to team up, and let the ordinary Ghanaian, the ordinary taxpayer, realize that we are in to protect their interests, and we are in to prevent this government from misusing the taxes that individuals struggle to pay in this country. The other one has to do with what is happening in South Africa. And I'm so disappointed that not just Ghana, but the entire continent, African continent, under an umbrella known as African Union, has failed to issue any condemning statement on the unnecessarily barbaric, backward, xenophobic attacks going on in South Africa, to the extent that we can now be described as foreigners. I think we need not wait for the victims in South Africa to be anyone related to us before we start talking about it. I will encourage, whilst we wait for the AU to do so, I will also encourage Ghana as a nation, probably through the Foreign Affairs Ministry or from the presidency, to be seen condemning what is happening in South Africa, because it is unlike an African, and it is something that all of us need to condemn, whether we feel that it is a distance away from us or it is closer to us. All of us need to condemn it. And so I want to use this medium to condemn it in totality and encourage all like-minded persons, particularly the nation as a whole, and the African Union, the other blocks like the ECOWAS and the other ones you can think of. I am encouraging and putting pressure on all of them to do same. What is happening there is not just affecting those individuals there, but it is an attack on all of us as Africans, and we need to confront it as such. Having said that, let me come to the issue, and I am happy my senior comrade Mutala has made real justice to the topic and to the issue. Let me start by saying that reforms in any way is always expected as far and as long as human life continues. Decisions you make today, tomorrow you may want to amend it. The next moment you may want to amend it. And I have been one person who has always advocated for some significant reforms, particularly in our educational sector. And the reason being that I believe that the educational sector is the backbone of any economy. Any serious developed economy has gotten its traits or its roots. If you want to see how well an economy will be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, just look at the strength of its current educational system. And that is the reason why I have always said that I believe strongly that particularly our contents that are being taught in our educational institutions need to be looked at critically, because most of it are not related to the vision of this country. That is, if we even have one. To where we intend seeing ourselves in the near future, most of the content that are taught in our educational system, you find it difficult to see the direct bearing. And so I have always advocated for it. When this government came into office, fortunately or unfortunately, they have tried to generate and to propose and to implement a number of reforms. Most of these reforms may be good. There are others too that do not really, you can't really see the logic and you can't see the real sense in them. I have always said that the policy of free SHS is long overdue. The implementation may be so difficult and the implementation may not be the right approach. But the concept of having a free SHS is something that I believe every progressive mind will want to embrace. And I haven't seen, neither have I heard, any person, particularly any political party in this country, speaking against the free SHS policy. So it is a policy, it's a reform, it's a policy that all of us embraces. There are others. For instance, the scrapping of examination or printing fees. It relieves to some large extent the burden that would have been on parents and guardians. And so there are some reforms that are very good, and there are some reforms that I personally embrace, and I encourage that we should find a way. If the implementation is becoming difficult, we should find a way as a nation to see how best we can generate a blueprint to have a successful implementation, and not necessarily taking it off, because in the long run it is something that is beneficial. I haven't really seen this government, or right from His Excellency former President Rawlings's end of tenure to date, I haven't really seen much and significant reforms made as far as our contents are concerned. And so I am still advocating for that, because that is one reform that I will wish that as a nation we'll be looking at. Bringing it down to this reform in a form of wanting to present a bill. If it goes through, it becomes a law. I have also heard, particularly this morning, hearing Professor Yanka, right, creating the impression to the effect that there's nothing that is even already in the system as far as this university bill is concerned. It is rather in the process, and it is now being developed. So he's even worried and surprised as to why people will be discussing the content when the document itself is not in the public domain. How did people get to know of the content? And he created the impression that the contents that are being discussed are not really what the real situation is. But funny enough, Senna, after listening to him, my mind went back to some few days, earlier, where I have heard Matthew Opoku Prempeh also discussing this same content. I have heard the information minister also discussing this same content. And so if Professor Yanka comes out to tell us that the content, or to create the impression that the content that we are discussing are not indeed what it really is, and so he is surprised that we are even discussing something that he doesn't even know where we are getting it from, then my question is, if it is something that is not really in existence, how come we are having a minister of education also discussing the same content? To the extent that we are also having an information minister discussing the same content. And yet we are to believe that these are individuals who are working together, and they are working, with a common standard or yardstick. Because Professor Yanka is a Minister of State in charge of what? Tertiary, right? Now, so he's dealing with education. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is also dealing with education. And when the two decides, or the Ministry of Education decides, then they feed the information minister to also come out to inform us. Now, one person from the education ministry says that what we are discussing doesn't reflect what the reality is. Another person from the Ministry of Education comes out and says that, look, I am discussing this thing because that is exactly what it is. Information ministry or minister also comes out to confirm and support what Matthew Opoku Prempeh is discussing in the public domain. The question I am asking is, whom do we believe? But let us assume, because you see, I initially was going to seek leave from you to so that I wouldn't discuss this topic, because clearly, if it is not in the public domain, what are we going to discuss? But I share to a very large extent with Mutala, because on the ground that this might be just an avenue for the NPP government to test the waters, to see and to realize how the reaction will be like, so that if they get a reaction that is not so opposing, they'll be encouraged to go ahead with it. Testing the waters. And so if they are in to test the waters, it is then important for us all as a nation to let them know that this proposed bill, the contents, some we have heard and we have seen, can be described in two clear words. One, it is needless, and two, it is premature. I see this so-called bill as needless and premature. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'll be very brief on this. You see, if you look at our 1992 Constitution, there has been all efforts made to ensure that certain key institutions that are supposed to be pillars for this country are to a very, very, very large extent autonomous. And the framers of our constitution were not sleeping. They didn't go in for alcohol to come and put this in there. They really thought through it because they knew what the implication would be if there should be a reverse of it. And so there are some key institutions. And unfortunately, you see, if you really believe in the rule of law, one of the standards or tests in checking whether a rule of law is really effective is to find out whether that rule has got what we call separations of powers. And the reason for separations of powers, among other things, is to serve as a check on each other. And that is why we will want to have the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. And some of us have advocated for us to look strongly into the avenue where we have executives going into the parliament to find, a number of parliamentarians also coming to work in the executive, because then it defeats the purpose for we having the separation of powers. I have always advocated for us to ensure that some institutions, like the police, the security, are to a large extent separated from the influences of the executive. And that is why when there was the Constitutional Reform Committee, which was set in place by the late former President Atta Mills, when I had the opportunity and privilege of communicating and meeting the committee, one of the things I told them was that let us find a way of reducing the so-called powers that has been given to just one person in the person of the president. Because the Constitution, when you look at it, it gives so much powers to just one person. And it is not the best for us as a nation. And I believe that, at least we've been made to believe, that we have a president who believes in the rule of law. And so if we have a president who believes in the rule of law, then I was expecting that this president would have known that one yardstick in determining a good rule of law or a successful rule of law is the separation of powers and reducing the powers that is vested in just one person. And indeed, one expectation I had of His Excellency Akufo-Addo was to initiate the implementation of the Constitutional Review Committee's reports. Because if that had taken place, we would have speedily seen the reduction of powers that is vested in just one person as far as our 92 Constitution is concerned. Unfortunately and disappointedly, the president is rather creating an avenue and communicating to everyone that, yes, he claims to believe in the rule of law, but he also believes that one person should be in charge of almost everything in this country. Look, if you look at the proposed bill that they have put portions in the public domain to test the waters, if you look at clause 47 of that bill, what it says is that the clause 47, the intention of clause 47 is simply to repeal that legislation which gives the University Academic Board the autonomy and freedom. If you look at clause 3 of the bill, it gives the president the power to dissolve council and to put in an interim one at any given point in time. Mind you, I have indicated that we have a president who has been packaged over the years to all of us that he is a president who believes in the rule of law. And I have said that one measure in checking whether there is really a rule of law in any jurisdiction is by looking at the extent to which there are separations of power. And so it was just logical that if we have such a president today, we will rather see the president championing and pushing for policies and things that will strengthen the rule of law in the way of having separations of power. Tell me one institution as we speak now which is really autonomous. Even though the Constitution calls for that, the Constitution also was able to find a way of, at the end of it all, directly and indirectly, decisions must come from the president. And so over the past period, if you look at the KNUST Act, if you look at the University of Winneba Act, and all the various campuses, their acts, you realize that the act communicates or gives provisions where it enforces the provision in the Constitution which says that they are autonomous organizations and autonomous bodies. Why is it that today, what has really changed? That today we want to bring in a bill that says that the council, the vice chancellor, the chancellor must and has and will be appointed by a president, can be dissolved at any time by a president. What kind of country are we building? Are we moving on as a nation? Are we being static? or we are going backwards as a nation. Look at the difficulties surrounding our inability to enforce laws in this country. And when we get to vigilantism, I will make mention of some few examples. But quickly, look at what is happening, where you even get senior officers at the security sector, in particularly the police service, coming out and lamenting and saying that not that they cannot act professionally, but because their hands are tied. Why is it that instead of building and strengthening our institutions, we are rather creating avenue to weaken our institutions? Today, we want to have a bill that says that the governor of the schools, in other words, the vice chancellors, the chancellors, the academic council, the boards, can be appointed by the president, can be dissolved by the president. A clause that says that we are going to have a pool where admission will be done from a centralized point. You know what that means? Practically, what it means is just the same as we are experiencing with the secondary school, where we have the computerized placement system. Because we all apply, and the computer will decide that, okay, you should go to St. Thomas Aquinas, you should go to St. Augustine's, you should go to Achimota, you should go here. Ghana School, you know. Look at you. You know, you should go to Ghana School, that's right. But how on earth will you want to have this kind of system in this modern era for universities? Universities that are supposed to be, you know, an institution taking care of adults, people that we want to groom to come and take up leadership and responsible positions in society. You want to find a way of reducing them to a second cycle institution by controlling them. What sense does this make? You know, what sense does this make? And so, as I indicated earlier, I will want to again encourage, particularly the opposition parties, if we can create a platform, a common platform, to communicate strongly to the ministry or to the president through the Ministry of Education that this policy, this bill, which they've decided to put in the public domain to test the waters, is a bill that we, the opposition political parties, the next government in waiting, do not subscribe to. And we are not subscribing to it because, not just because we belong to an opposition political party, but because we have the interest of the larger populace at heart. And we believe strongly that this bill will not inure to the benefit of the Ghanaian populace. You know, it will not inure to the benefit of our various university and tertiary institutions that we have. We are rather looking for avenues to reduce the powers that has been vested in just one person, the president. And this we have tried doing right from His Excellency the late President Atta Mills' time. To reduce the 1992 constitution, the power vested in one person, the executive. The executive has got powers to do almost everything. We want to see how we want to reduce it. And in the process of reducing it, we don't want to be seen creating avenues of giving more powers or additional powers to one person being the president. We don't want that, particularly in our educational sector, which is so key and a backbone to the development of this country. We don't want it to be seen being handled in the palm of just one person.
Comrade, thank you very much. You heard Emmanuel Wilson, who is convener of COIS 2. So we are talking about the education sector. If you just joined us, the developments we've had during the week. Before I come to Dr. Like the Nigerians who say, Dr. Honorable Augustine Tewia. Before I come to him, let me just read a couple of messages from WhatsApp. First one, Kojuchu Mboafo said this one, said, Senna, when you vote into power someone who never passed a single exam in his life, this is what happens. And for those who think the psychological empowerment of students is attained when they are given new uniforms, I disagree. When we were students in funky liberal days of the 1970s and 1980s, we used to attain psychological nirvana by rolling up the holy herb. And by the time you had a few puffs, you see clearly. The rain was gone. You could see all obstacles in your way. You would get to the river's edge and not be able to tell the difference between driftwood and a hungry crocodile. That's from Kojo Chumbuafo. And some more from our WhatsApp number. And the WhatsApp number is 0233 995905, 0233 995905. You can send a message through there, we'll read it out. And this one from Eric Okonu at La Paz says, my question is, those vigilante groups like Delta Force and Invisible Forces that were employed at national security, example, like DOPO who formerly sell mobile phones at Seco, what is President Anado doing about that? This one from Asanko in Santa Maria says, some people behave as if they have forgotten that they are also mortals. Well, this one, I'm not sure consensus. Yes. And good morning. I feel so sorry for my people at times. The level of hypocrisy of this government is so sorrowful. This is government who said we don't eat infrastructure, yet they are jubilating over mere long list of this super incompetent government intention to construct roads and other infrastructure. Have we forgotten that Kufuor sought for construction of roads twice as many as Nanado is cutting today, yet none of those bogus roads materialized? Please examine the list carefully, and you see that most of the roads on the list were supposed to have started and be completed by now, yet none of them are currently on site. Please do me a favor and ask the status of the Baumia concrete road in Tema. Please, let's be careful with the propaganda of this government. No serious government or prime minister will go around commissioning 0.35 kilometers fourth class roads. I feel so sad to hear same journalists jubilating over this scam. Some sent that from the UK. Walanyo Inakwetia says, changing school uniform doesn't make sense to me, by the way. Instead of them tackling core issues such as furniture, textbooks, ICT centers, infrastructure, and above all, teacher motivation, they are thinking of giving these uniforms contract to China, changing it at whose expense? I may sound so harsh and disrespectful, but I'm writing this article with pains and disappointment since regards to NSC Kumi. Alhaji Willie P. in Efia Kuma says, so many reforms in our educational sector. Why? Parents cannot afford to buy these new uniforms Education Minister and co-introduce. And this hard and bitter economic hardships, how do they expect parents to buy it if not a heartless and insensitive government who will do this? Perhaps the gross challenges facing the sector is not about introduction of new school uniforms. Please fix the problems and stop being cynical. We are sick and of this misplaced priorities. It's killing the sector. This one says, in the first 2 years of Professor John Evans Satamil, 6 classroom blocks and dormitories were built in all senior high schools throughout the country. And that's from a GK Apesi in Kantamanso. This one said, good morning. I'm Ebenezer from Kwabenya Welder Junction. Let's commend the Lawyer Short Commission for their recommendation on the Iowa West Wagon by-election incidents. I'll also call on the president to do justice to their recommendations and let the rule of law work if he really stands by his word. Let me say, I want to say good morning to Israel Nonyebe. And this one, Eric, okay. This one from Efo Ganyu in Keta says, Senna, good morning, please. I would humbly suggest to Comrade Mutala to succinctly enumerate the pros and cons of the proposed public universities bill, instead of rambling all along with extraneous topics introduced into his arguments. It is always humbling to accept genuine opposing views to improve one's performance. Thank you. This one from Yamoha Inwa says, this public universities bill is brought about by this government just to wipe away the kind of humiliation it served in the hands of the Otumfor for not accepting any interferences from government quarters at the recent NAST issue when the education minister tried to show his muscles. Already the president has so many powers and must not be added more. And finally, Eric Okono from La Paz again says, MPP government don't have proper policy for education. Look at free education. It's traffic lights. They are now planning to change JHS uniform, which parents will pay under the leadership of President John Mahama. School uniform and sandals was free. MPP government, please don't destroy our education system and our children's future. That's from Eric Okono at La Paz. Honorable.
Thank you very much, my host and my fellow panelists. This is my first visit to Radio Gold.
Welcome.
So I had to find my way here. I have been at other radio stations, television stations. But it is very fascinating to participate in this phase of our national dialogue in relation to higher education in this country, especially public higher education. Indeed, the government supports higher education. And by that, the funding and the presence of higher education in this country, because like we have said, it is the basis of the human resource development, and on that, so many things that happen in this country are premised on higher education, because moving from merely developing people, we want specialization on the health sector. You come to transport, road building, and all of that. You need engineers. So higher education is key, and we spend quite a bit of our national resources in doing that. If it is a public institution, it is important that the government be involved in that. So we have laws relating to the National Council for Tertiary Education, in which government provides what? A broad framework about how many females and males we want. We are working towards parity in terms of that gender parity, so that we will have 50-50, the number of people, males attending university and other higher education institutions equal to the females, so that they can all become partners in participating in the progress of the country. But besides that, we also know that we have national priorities in terms of the people that we turn out from our institutions. So government must do something about male in terms of science and the humanities. So all of these things create a context in which government, who we have entrusted responsibility to ensure that we have higher education in the country, do not sit aloof. Government must be heard, must be involved. The big question is, how does government get involved in a way that it is not intrusive, in a way that it doesn't take away the powers of the higher education institutions in terms of academic freedom, in terms of the management of the institutions, in terms of innovation, in terms of focus of these institutions. So the thing to do throughout the history of higher education is for the institution ordering the oversight of the institutions to actually provide what? Policy. When you provide the policy, then the institutions draw their power and the norms of that institution from what? From the framework of that policy. And that is why we have the National Council for Tertiary Education. That ensures that all the public institutions, and even not only public, but private institutions that operate in this country, they have a policy framework within which to operate. For example, the technical universities, we want them to have what? More science, technology-based programs. and not humanities producing marketing students. When they finish, they can't find any jobs. What are we producing in this country for which we have to produce marketing students? So, essentially, we need policy. But policy is different from what this government is approaching the issue. And what this government is approaching? It's approaching what they call the harmonized public universities system. This talk has come about a whole lot. I just left the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education. I was a deputy ranking member, and I'm now in the Foreign Affairs Committee. And like the chairman have said, we have not seen any bill. We have seen scattered information that are provided at some of our meetings saying that, oh, government is interested in doing this, government is interested in doing that. But specifically, they have not brought us a bill, but they have put it in the public domain. So certainly, they want stakeholders to look at it. Well, as somebody said, they have put it out there to test the waters, to see what will happen. The waters are muddy. The waters are not flowing well. And the processes that this whole bill seeks to put out, the goals are dysfunctional. They are dysfunctional to what a tertiary institution is supposed to be. When you look at tertiary institution, and I'm using the word tertiary and higher education synonymously, in the history of the evolution of what became universities, in Italy, in Germany, in England, they were a guild of people who were teaching individuals on how to be gentlemen. So like you are from a royal family, and in the olden days, that's what it was. You are either a royal or a serfdom. So what they did was, as a royal, they want you to become a child from that family to also pick up the characteristics of royalty. And that means you must speak well, you must dress well, you must come out as a polite, sophisticated person. You must be able to have cogent arguments. Wherever you step and you are doing something, it shows that you are a distinguished person. And that's how they were going to school for, because their jobs were already cut. It's a royal who is going to be the next king. So in those European countries where higher education started, this was the purpose. And those people who were teaching them in Bologna, in later on England, they were all together as a guild. So we are all equal. Then we elect one of ourselves to become what? To become the leader of the group. And in all of this, higher education was actually a private matter. For example, in the United States, when that country was founded, higher education came to the United States as what? As a private enterprise. Stanford, Harvard, Duke, Princeton. Princeton is Presbyterian, Harvard is Congregational, and the rest, they were all church-related institutions. So they were private institutions, and they were training what? Pastors. Then they added this program, they added that program, and they expanded to be what they are. But you go a little further. In 1861, there was a law that was passed in the United States called the Moral Law. And that law sought to now have the public as the states to have their own university system. And that university system was to improve the life of the people through agriculture and mechanics. That's how they call it. So we have Texas A&M, agriculture and mechanics. Florida A&M, University of Tennessee, that's what it was. And you go, University of Delaware, North Carolina State. All those institutions were established then by the government to provide what? Things that will connect with the lifestyle of people. For example, they wanted to produce a cow bigger than the normal cow they had. So scientists were looking at how the cow fed. And the process of feeding, they they did experiments to make the mouth wider so that I can eat more grass. They studied the grass to find out which ones the animal will eat, and therefore it will grow faster. All of those things were critical to higher education. So when government came in those states, government gave them what? Regulation. The regulation is what we call the policy. So that in the state of Tennessee, where I went to school in the United States, there's a policy. The Tennessee University system, we have the medical school in Memphis, we have the law school in Knoxville, we have the business school in Martin, all of that, so that throughout the state, everybody will have a fair share of higher education representation. These institutions are autonomous institutions. What does it mean? It means that government has a broad regulation on funding. But government is not going to say that now your council, you must have this number of people. And then they must have rotational basis. And then they must have this. No. It's going to say that you must be governed based on a systematic process that ensures transparency, value for money, and all of that. Based on that framework, then they derive the powers of the Senate. They call it the University Senate. So we are seeking, and that's a big problem in this country, the traditions of the places several of us went to school. I taught for several years at Gimpa. We had people who went to Germany. They want to introduce the German system. We had people who went to England. They want to introduce the English system. And those of us who went to school in the United States. Those who went to bigger universities, graduate students can be in a department, can be as low as 4, a PhD program. My doctoral program I went to, we were 28 in that program. So somebody says, we were starting a PhD program in Gimpa, and we are self-financed institution. And some people said, no, 12 is too much. We need to have 6. You are making a mistake. What are the exigencies of our context? Contextualizing the issue in our own society. So what has happened, as we see here today, is a process of actually extracting all these interests that we have into a coherent system of a policy that guides higher education. But that policy is not to do what? It's not to start glorified high schools by way of writing one uniform system. The day they were roping, secondary schools, they were roping the same day. Is that not so? Yeah. Then they close the same day. Now the yellow track goes for several weeks, the green track goes for several weeks. That will not fly in university higher education, because there are so many things that are unique to university education. And one of those things is what? Is the sense of differentiation. University of Ghana, established in around 1948. KNU was established for the humanities. For a long time, the best subject that people study at the University of Ghana was history. Until we had business administration that became very big in the 80s and 90s, when we were there in the 80s. You come to KNUST. What was the focus? They started it with dispensing technicians, chemical sellers, that we call them today. Then they improved that so that it will become what? It will become a pharmacy program. Then Kwame Nkrumah said, no, technology. So we need engineers. We need to build roads. And they expanded that. Cape Coast was established as a college of education to train science teachers. The government of Ghana obtained grants from India. So a lot of the people who were there at the beginning were lecturers from India. And what was very interesting, when they started this, the lecturers were not only teaching them in the classroom, they were actually involved in the processes. For example, sugar that we have here, for those of us who are over 40 years and so forth, they are telling us if you want to eat sugar at all, it should be brown sugar and should not be a whole lot. So when the Indians came here, far back in the 60s, they were able to produce brown sugar. The students went on a riot. It's sand, they won't eat it. You put it in the porridge and it discolors it. The porridge is supposed to be white. Sugar is crystal white. You see, that was context. The university grew, and now they had business education, arts education, English education. It has gotten to the point where, in fact, education is even frowned upon at the University of Cape Coast. So we had to move away from University of Cape Coast and establish a whole new university of education, Winneba. They were starting a medical school and people were concerned. So what it is these universities were established in context. They have different circumstances, different focus, and therefore to do a harmonized status for all of them, what are you doing? GIMPA is a government institution. Are we saying that we are going to classify GIMPA as University of Ghana? University of Ghana has grown, expanded, and has a different focus. So what we do is we write a broad government policy regarding gender, regarding resource-based higher education. When you undertake higher education in your campus, what are the results? We want every student to be what? To become a critical thinker. The issues that you confront, you reflect on them very carefully so that you don't just take any information. Any information. As I taught my classes in leadership and governance, always I use Bloom's taxonomy, in which you begin with what? The basics of comprehension, then you develop, it's a pyramid. So everybody basically does comprehension. But as we go further on the education ladder, we come to what? We come to evaluation. We come to synthesis. And what happens? Then there's sophistication of analysis. Otherwise, people are just going to operate by describing something. Oh, what is this? It's apple. What is this? It's orange. What is this? It's a bottle. Those are basic levels. Then you go to a level of sophistication. So when these institutions are trying to do different things, multi-campus systems, like we have with Winneba. They have a campus in Kumasi, the College of Technology. They have the College of Agricultural Science in Mampong. How do you box them with University of Ghana, which is localized in Accra? How do you do that? KNUST, they are based in Kumasi. They have distance learning programs. How do you bring them together and say that they should the statute should be like this so that the principal of a college are displaced? Because they also have adult education centers throughout all the existing regional capitals. They had them. How do you do that for the country? So when you bring everybody and say this is a harmonized statute, you will have this number of people, then the government has appointed this. And what is even painful is the unions within the universities. They were going to be working with it on what? Rotational basis. Rotational basis. That's terrible. Every union has interest. We have the GAWA, which is the management people, and then we have the FUSAG. And all of these groups function so that their interests are protected, the integrity of the university is protected. But above that, so that information can get to everybody. So if they are now going to have people on rotational basis for 4 years, how are the senior management people going to hear about things that are going on? How are you going to get their buy-in? Because Washington, D.C., they have a very interesting car, the license plate of everybody in Washington, D.C. When you get your car plate, it says that what? Taxation without representation. Because although there is the capital of the United States, they pay taxes. They don't have anybody who is a congressman for Washington, D.C. That's what is going to happen with the unions. They clean the buildings. They make sure that we have a functional context, what we call a university. And now we are shutting them off. That is very, very extreme for the government to intrude into the higher education system. For a general understanding of UNESCO, they say The higher education is a way of government to keep an eye on system performance without having to resort to intrusive forms of control, without having to engage in intrusive forms of what? Of control. What we saw in Widiba was a terrible tragedy of higher education interference. It was such a chaotic process of the government seeking to enter. All the parties that are involved, Afenyo Mankin that my brother mentioned here, they all regret for what they have done because they were misled. They were giving information that were not true. And in the final analysis, what happened? They have the person that they were hooting for, it appears, and I'm using the word guidedly. I don't have evidence. But what we have heard, it appears that he didn't even live up to the expectation of those who were sponsoring him to actually oust Professor Mauto Avoke so that they can bring somebody else. So in the final analysis, what did they accomplish? Nothing significant. Rather, disclosure. And you see, higher education institutions are insulated from government control. And we should work towards that. Because I must be able, as a scholar, to publish what my findings are. And sometimes they will speak against government. Yeah. We have met lecturers at Winneba who said, I teach political science. I'm tagged by somebody that I'm the opposition. Therefore, any examples that I provide in my class is a problem. This government prides itself in saying that it is what? It is center right, and therefore they are more towards what? Individual ownership of property. Meanwhile, all they are doing is what? Social interventions. Deceptive social interventions. And the deceptive social intervention, what is it leading to? It is a populist system of overthrowing all the structures in place so that they can put MPP people there. I mean, we see it every day. We see it every day. Who now at the Ministry of Education I work there as Executive Secretary of the National Teaching Council, as the Acting Chief Inspector of Schools. And so I was in the corridors of the Ministry of Education on everyday basis. All those people who were there are removed. They are removed because they, as soon as somebody says that somebody is NDC, or he appears to be NDC, your name sounds like it's NDC, your appointment was during the NDC time, you are sent to Siberia. You are sent to Siberia. So, in fact, the role of research, the role of quality teaching, that must be characterized by the university, should be done in an atmosphere of freedom of expression with responsibility. We are not saying go there and say anything at all. But that responsibility should not be circumscribed by the government, in which you must look over your shoulder to see who is watching you. I'm telling you, at Winneba, students were being summoned so that they will go and find out what the lecturer said. What the lecturer said. It has come to that. But the worst case scenario, and I have said it, and it can even happen, like my brother said, even if it happened in NDC, I will say it. The biggest mistake of our government was to appoint Professor Bakan as what? As the council chair. He is a member of the university community. He is on the payroll of the university. How can he become the council chair? And for example, his own promotion was pending before the council. That's a huge conflict of interest. We must use a lot of wisdom in tackling these issues. The bravado with which some people operating at the Ministry of Education is terrible. The way in which they want to run higher education in this country is terrible. And not only higher education, the entire education system is terrible. I have worked in every aspect of it at the ministry. I only left there 2 years ago. I know what happens there. Education is not like giving anesthesia to somebody's teeth, gum, and extract the teeth. And therefore, in 5 minutes, you'll be able to tell whether it's hurting or not. Education is a process of ensuring that people obtain knowledge, that knowledge helps them to transform, and they serve. So some of the things that we are going to change this. Sometimes you talk to people in the Ministry of Education now, people in leadership. In 5 minutes, the next person who talks to them, the whole policy is changed. There must be a consistent process, not an ad hoc process of somebody's just charisma. And therefore, we are going to do this, we are going to do that. Now I'm telling you, every headmaster in this country is intimidated. People can speak. People at the Ministry of Education can speak. And it is the same with our vice chancellors. Those who asserted the independence of them, of the institution in which they served. What happened to them? I served on the council of Cape Coast Technical University until January 2017. We had a very fine professor, Professor Lawrence. Let me just stop with Lawrence. And what happened? Some kangaroo rule was used, some technicality, so that he can be removed. And they tried that at other places, at other technical universities. Why? What happened? Tamale, what happened? All of those things are targeting NDC people. Professor Ayunso at the language school in Jumakun. That is his crime for having been regional minister before. And on and on and on. But you see, when we are dealing with academics, it's very dispassionate. And I enjoy the atmosphere in Gimpa because government gave us the free hand to operate. I don't know what is happening there because even in their own appointment of rector, all kinds of mess happened until somebody was brought in there. So the point I'm emphasizing here is higher education as an institution is a sophisticated context in which people with dispassionate values sit down, talk, reflect, and when they finish, we go and drink tea. But when it comes to the issue, if during our presentations at GIPA, as I was at the School of Governance and Leadership, and we had weekly presentations in which what I'm doing, the research I'm conducting, and my colleagues would criticize me and the methodology I'm using, the literature may be archaic, and so forth and so forth. And so when we finish, it enriches the discussion. What is happening right now is boxing people to a little image of someone. And it is very, very unfortunate. Admission of students. Admission of students. We are being told that now the admission of students will take place in what sense? By a centralized system. You see, like I was saying, people are taking different academic traditions without looking at the context. I work in a university in the United States where we went from a regular school where each student applied for admission to a centralized system. So if you, we call it the common core application. If you put your application in, as you have filled it out, you check the box. I want my application to go to this university, that university. It's the code. As soon as you put the code in, the university will receive it. But what was the purpose? When I went to the University of Memphis, my application fee was $5. But at the same time, I applied to the University of Kansas. It was $95. I applied to Vanderbilt University. It was $150. In Ghana, we must be honest with ourselves. The resources we have for our universities have never been sufficient. Do you know how they survive? They survive because some of the finance officers work with some vice chancellors creatively so that 30% of the places will be reserved for international students. Do we have 30% of the students coming from international sources? No. But because they have been reserved for international students, then our local people who couldn't get the great cut-off paying students to take those places. And I'm telling you, that is how our universities are surviving. University of Cape Coast Medical School is completely what? Cash and carry. If you don't have the money, you don't go to the University of Cape Coast Medical School because it's fully fee-paying system. If you go to KNUST, all the graduate programs they have in KNUST, they are what? Fee-paying. So the university have the latitude to be able to manage this internally generated fund to purchase vehicles and other things. Otherwise, those universities can't survive. After government has paid the payroll, made up the payroll, the money that is left for the university is very, very minimal. And at least I have sat through 2 budget preparations, 2017 and 2018. I was a deputy ranking, and all the hard questions that I was supposed to ask, I asked them. The point is, they never have enough. And in fact, in the past, it was the government subvention that was the budget. Today, if you don't put in the IGF, the universities will not survive. The universities will not survive. So you see, when you have these big problems, and the institutions are using innovative approaches to solve them, and you come in there and have a harmonized status so that government representation, then they can do this, they can do that, common application, you are micromanaging such an institution. A university should be able to relax and say, we are going to do university farm in Pong and raise cattle. We are going to have agricultural station. We are going to have collaboration with CSIR. We are going to have another collaboration with University of California system. And all this is University of Ghana. KNUST should be able to come in and have a program with the Commonwealth. Look at University of Cape Coast, the edifice they have built at Ajiringano here for distance learning. And they are doing it throughout the country. So there is some common goodwill. And that is why you staff that place with what? With the best management team. You have the vice chancellor who must have what? A terminal degree and also a professor in his field. A pro-vice chancellor, and then you have all the provosts, plus the finance officer, the deputy finance officer, you have the registrar, then the deputy registrars in all the programs. The bottom line is all of these high caliber people make for efficiency. Make for efficiency. So if you are going to go in there and try to macromanage it, it's a government in disaster. And somebody have said that the Ministry of Education may be the signpost of sending this government to opposition. And I'm glad that they are doing it and doing it well. But it hurts me because I'm an academic. And I don't want the academic approach to be so cold to the extent that the things that are happening will hurt the present students before we come and fix it. I can tell you, if the NDC is in power, we will fix this malicious malware. This is a virus that's coming. It is worse. And this doesn't follow any academic tradition nor any of the critical areas the university is supposed to do. We want our graduates to be critical thinkers who have skills and connect the skills they have acquired from the university to the world of work. What is happening is unnecessary interference. The Americans have something they call, if I'm broke, don't fix it. What is broken in the current system that they are going to fix with this bill? So this bill is really nothing to write home about. Nothing to really write home about. We need the best pool of students. They compete for places. They compete for places so that they can actually come with the diversity of backgrounds that they have. What is the university considering? But to have a common pool, like he said, we are basically going to select, like they have done with jobs right now. My district, my constituency is in the region. All the guys that they are selecting to work, they are all MPP guys. Is that going to be any stranger if we find out that also, even the university, they are selecting MPP people? Vice chancellors, that's what they are doing. Lecturers, that's what they are doing. Provosts, that's what they are doing. Ministry of Education, that's what they are doing. This country has been built on an inclusive system. and the diversity. We thrive in our diversity rather than the diversity we have in this country tearing us apart. My last name is Tewia. Am I Gan? Am I Ever? Am I from North Volta? Am I from Broahafo? It doesn't matter. The values that I bring to the table, the abilities that I bring to the table, that's the same thing that must characterize higher education in our country. So that we have a coherent system responding to our needs, preparing the human resource base we need, and be able to have quality value, and return on the training of our people. So I just want to end by saying that what we need is quality content of our education culminating in outputs that ensures that we have an entrepreneurial student, entrepreneurial outcome, and therefore the university itself reinvent itself through accreditation, through resourcing from the National Council for Tertiary Education, and through linkages with other people, and not to be boxed into a four-square wall of the government, the Flagstaff House.
Well, Doc, thank you very much. But my understanding from my producer is that you want to leave a bit earlier.
Yes.
So we'll take a brief comments on the second topic before you go. But before I come back to you, I would just like to remind our listeners that you're listening to Alhaji and Alhaji live on Radio Gold 90.5. We're live on tunein.com. We're also live on PAP MCGH on Facebook. Just share your comments with us. The number to use for WhatsApp comment is 0233 995905, 0233 995905. Or you can use the PAP MCGH comment section. Just comment, I'll read them out. Don't forget, one of the sponsors of Alhaji And Alhaji is Franco Trading Enterprise. They are telling you that if you make a purchase through their online platforms, they'll give you a 30% discount. You can use www.francotrading.com or www.francophones.com and buy from their online shop, and your phone will be delivered. You can use www.francotrading.com, www.francophones.com, or their app. You can download that app through Google Play, and they'll give you a 30% discount on anything you buy, and also it will be delivered free if you are within a car. I'll come back and read some messages, but let me take Doc's brief views on our second topic that has to do with vigilantism, and we've been talking about that for some time. The development this week has had to do with the bill, and then the second one, the attempt to agree on modality for the forum that the president proposed. Doc.
Thank you very much. Again, we want to build a very inclusive country. And that means we have a level playing ground for people to participate in the country. Politically, economically, socially, anything you want to do in this country, to have a free expression based on the articles of the Constitution, that freedom of association, freedom of worship, and freedom of enterprises. Interestingly, our political culture is changing, and by that, people have observed that they cannot win elections freely. I live in Ayawaso, West Wuogon. My house is not too far from where these incidents happened. I was on the ground on that day. I'm glad that I wasn't captured on TV and therefore to appear before the Short Commission and so forth. But what I witnessed that day was a terrible, terrible situation. But I've witnessed something similar to that. The referendum that was done on December 27th, 2018, for the creation of the regions, what I witnessed in my district was terrible. And that was window dressing for West Wuogon and therefore for 2020. Vigilantism. I was in Aburi with the former president, incoming president Mahama, and he did a presentation before the diplomatic community. Basically, he showed footage of the media, not any specialized person who was filming for the NDC, but just the media. And the story be told that what happened there, where a legislator, Honorable Sam George, was actually assaulted physically. And we had people who were there just basically dress as if they are going for war. And these people are not part of the security system, the security apparatus of the country. They are just individuals. So vigilantes, like the former president said, actually, if we are having elections, you want some guys who have lifted weights and walk with you so that at least it keeps some people away. But when you have people who are dressed to the hilt, they are trained at the VVIP training center at Asuchari, and these guys are going about with guns and with all this weaponry. That's terrible. That's terrible. So a solution must be found, and I think the solution is where we are going. The government has proposed a bill in which land guards as well as political vigilantes, people cannot assemble and undertake activities inimical to the progress of our country through these processes. And so it is a good step. My position would have been, we need more dialogue before the legislation, before the initiation of the bill. Because you see, we have to look at the nuances of this. It has festered in this country already. In some places, during election day, it is a very dangerous place to go around. And I know cases where people did not stay in their own constituency, in the Western region, some places in the Western region, because their lives were in danger. So they couldn't even go there and vote. Now, when it gets to this extreme, because the security services, their hands are tied, inspector of police is standing there, and these vigilantes are ordering people about, and he doesn't have a way of doing anything that's serious. So the bill that has come is something welcoming, at least to address the issues for the Azoka boys, the Bamba boys, Delta Force, Invisible Force, the Tamale Bulldogs, all of them to actually disband. That's very good. But this is the situation we don't want in this country. The hypocrisy of saying on paper that everybody should disband. And now, from the grapevine, we are picking that as they travel on official visits, they go with these people and they are training them in some places. They are training them in some countries. If the South Africans came here to train and the state security found them, now they are sending them. So by 2020, those people are ready to cause mayhem. And they will come as individuals. But they have that sophisticated training. They come to my district and they organize some boys. Oh, we are election observers. But they have given them tactical training to ensure that they disrupt the elections, to ensure that in the strongholds of a certain political party, they go there and take the ballot away and beat up people, intimidate people and everybody. I mean, in fact, if the NDC has not pulled out, do you think people are still going to go in their numbers when they heard that people are being maimed and killed and shot? People are going to stay away. So if we are going to pass legislation regarding this, then it must be done properly, sincerely and honestly, so that it doesn't become something to the disadvantage of somebody. Because what happens is, it says you ban it, and to be fair with you, I stop it. If we had any people, as people said, nobody, the NDC doesn't have an organized group. What it is individual sponsors some people, so that during election times they can walk with some sense of dignity, some sense of effectiveness. So essentially what I have found with this bill is it seeks to address the issues. The J term that they have proposed, 10 years and so forth, maybe it should be deterrent enough for people not to be involved in these things. The challenge is whether it will be implemented, because on our statute books we have so many things in this country, but are they enforced? And in terms of elections, it will be very, very dangerous, because if one group finds out that indeed It was only a small screen to say we have a law, and actually the state doesn't enforce it, and they are therefore winning the elections by using intimidation and those things. People are also going to resort to something else, and it's not going to be peaceful. I call on the National Peace Council to be involved in this process of dialogue. We are coming back to Parliament on the 29th. We recessed yesterday, but we are coming back on because of the certificate of emergency for a week to ensure that we pass this law. But the difficult part of it is, will it be enforced, and not just something window dressing of the issues?
Well, Doc, thank you very much.
Thank you too.
So, he'll be taking leave of us shortly. Like I was addressing a honorable Dr. Augustine Tavia. That's how the Nigerians like to say. Like to put it all together.
I just go by first name basis.
Well, so before I come to the other doc on the show, just a couple of things. One, Hunchun capsules is one of the products of Kulun Ghana Limited. It helps in treating urinary disorders, prostate challenges. So you can get one and try it out for yourself. And they also have Kim tablet for high and low blood pressure or hypertension. You can call Kulun Ghana Limited through 0244 139 176. 0244 139 176, 0204 139 176, and 0274 139 176. A couple of your messages through PAP MCGH on Facebook before I move on to Dr. David Percy. Charles Thompson says, unearthing of talent in Ghana has always been the Achilles heel of corrupt breeding politicians and officials. CJ says, Senna, why can't you see this PUB or the Public Universities Bill is to pave way for admitting their mediocre crop of free senior high school students? And also Stello Ado is talking about Dr. Percy. He says, welcome Dr. Percy. I love to listen to you. Please try and be coming every Saturday. God bless you. Hamza Isaaku says, this government is ruling the nation as if it is their household's menu, where they choose what food to eat today and what food to eat tomorrow. The draft bill is ridiculous and must be thrown to dogs. Send that from Efiekuma Zongo. Evangelist Christopher Mensang Gamli says, Senna, we're told by Akufo-Addo and Bawumia now our roads are going to be concrete. Hope the ones he's cutting short for are concrete ones. Also, Akufo-Addo and the MPP must know they will not be in power forever. For that matter, if they make bad laws, it will tend to hunt them in opposition. A couple more messages. Rukai Abubakar says, Sana, what do you expect? Nado was sacked from Accra Academy for non-performance. His father took him to the UK to attend home school where he had no classmates. After his poor performance in A-level, he was brought back to Ghana and pushed by his father to Legon to read economics. While leaving Legon, he could not make any class, but just a consolation pass to push out of their campus. Such a low... Well, he sent that from New York at some point in time. That Isaac Frimpong says the academia agreed 100% with Mahmoud Bawumia on all the lies or falsehood. Agreed 100% with Akufo-Addo on all judicial manipulations. The interference at the Electoral Commission, at the banking sector, useless policies, tribal bigotry, family friends, in-laws, and concubines government. So what has changed? Charles Nyame and Asamankese says, before anybody will want to jubilate over what took place in Tamale, let him first find out the state of a Kumfi pineapple project now. After the president moved all state machinery there to Kasod and made the same noise as today, let's all be reminded of the fact that you believe this MPP government at your own risk. And it says a happy birthday to George Quatson in Adenta. Francis Ahofi, before I come to Doc, good morning, sir. Even though the MPP may have good policies, their own hindrances are the failure to broadly consult stakeholders before public notice. Another issue is that the MPP always takes hasty decisions without thinking through properly. Our educational curriculum should be acclimatized with our Ghanaian setting and culture, and not necessarily that of Singapore or any foreign country. It's not every foreign policy that may succeed here in Ghana, though it may survive elsewhere. However, our curriculum should meet the international standard. Our major problem vis-a-vis education is that governments pay little or no attention to the teacher, who is the main stakeholder. For a successful education, I advise the government to 1. Equip the teacher, and 2. Provide a conducive classrooms. First thing first. Change of uniforms shouldn't be the priority when we are envisaging a better education for our pupils. He sent that from Valley View. Doc.
Thank you. I thought you would say to your correspondent who suggested I should appear on your show.
That's out
I
of.
don't come here on my own motion.
That's out of your hand. That is in Patrick's hand. Yeah.
But I think good morning, right?
Good morning. Yes, good morning.
To all our listeners and viewers. You're asking us to speak to the Public Universities Bill saga, the reforms in primary education.
Yes.
Our government is using, or the government of Nana Addo is using smokes and mirrors to confuse Ghanaians. This tactic of discussing in inverted commas a non-existent bill. Okay, as we speak, I hear that through various versions of the draft, even while government spin doctors and publicists say that the matter is not in the public domain, and so it is a waste of time to discuss it. Okay. Now it reminds me of the approach they used to railroad the obnoxious and treasonous is it Defense Cooperation Agreement?
Yes.
With the US.
Yeah.
Which required, first of all, that it be signed by the president. That an agreement be signed before it got to Parliament. Yet it went to Parliament as a draft, but was passed. And to date, I've not seen any of our people in Parliament in opposition challenge this illegality. There is by simple process, you cannot pass what has not been executed, right? But this is the same trick. It is clear from some of the established in the public domain that this has been communicated to some bodies. At least I've seen a response by the University of Health and Allied, a commentary on what was forwarded to them, which is at the same time not available to the rest of us. Okay. But you see, for me, all of this is a sideshow. The real problem is very, very simple. On December 7th, Ghanaians elected a tribalist. On the 7th of January, we saw in this tribalist, he's also a con man, a political thug, and a despot. And all the things that have happened to date are the markings of a despot. And who is a despot? It's a person, a ruler, who seeks to control all power and often uses it in a cruel and arbitrary manner. So our president, through his government of cousins, nephews, in-laws, controls our government. Our government, because of the nature of our government, largely controls who will prosper. So before coming here, I heard you reading, talking about, was it you? Some contractors who are not being paid. Yes. And we've had testimony to that their monies will in fact rot. Okay? And it's, in a certain sense, it's retroactive vengeance against persons who were close to the previous government, and by extension got contracts. So we'll deny you contracts in the present and we'll go after you retroactively if you had the temerity to deal with our enemies by refusing to pay you now for what you've done and what is due you. But basically, we're looking at, they've taken control of the economy. Who prospers, who doesn't. They have control of the media, the state media. That one is fairly straightforward and simple. It didn't require much effort. But also of the private media, through intimidation, threats of violence, and all kinds of instruments that they've used to compromise them. Now they want to control the space of thought, independent thinking. Our universities remain spaces for independent thought. Even if we may note in passing that they have not used it for our best benefit. Because I remember, in the course of the last contest for this thing, there were professors, academics, who, in spite of the hollowness of proposals that were presented, suggested that we should give the candidate Nadu the benefit of the doubt. They suggested, academics, speaking in their fields of competence, on numbers that do not add up, on proposals that the government intended was canvassing for the purpose of getting elected. I remember on this particular issue of free SHS, where professors and academics were saying that, look, we shouldn't examine the issues too much. We should give the con man and his party the benefit of doubt. But academic freedom exists in spite of such buffoons. It exists for the progress of society. We can go back through history. I mean, we're giving a discourse in that by Dr. Taylor, that societies have developed, okay, largely on the basis of thought, contrary thinking, critical thinking, that can only flourish in the spaces provided by universities. Now, our despot controls who prospers. He controls through his assigns and through his agents, what we see, what we hear, what we read, or is seeking to do that every day. He seeks to control the final frontier, what we can think. And that's really what underlies all of this nonsense. So we should recognize the clear and present danger. We have a despot who wants to control every aspect of our life, who wants to mark our society for the foreseeable future. And I'm not surprised that this is meeting fierce resistance, even from known MPP sympathizers, who, at least to their credit, recognize the clear dangers. They did not see it before. Okay? Of course, our government has the numbers to pass any bill they wish. Right? They have a loyal group of effectively zombie MPs who will pass anything that is put in front of them. And through thuggery, through threats of violence, through various instruments of compromising people, they can get them to toe the line. The issue really, and the responsibility really lies with those who are not in that orbit yet, who can speak out and say that, sorry, this will not pass. But for the moment, that is what I think must be noted. And these, all the signs written about it from day one, are the signs of a despot. He has done it with Bank of Ghana. He did it. Got people out, replaced them. Electoral Commission. Anywhere he deigns must be changed, will be changed, using those booga booga methods. By whatever means, he'll get his way. And I have no doubt that if he really desires it, this thing will pass through Parliament. But it is up to the rest of us as to what we do. Because a large part of that depends on the next elections. And I'm sure we'll come speak to that when we come to discuss the issues about the so-called vigilantism bill. Okay, but all of this is about power. It's used to control society in every aspect of our lives. That's really all there is to it.
Thank you very much, Doc. And closing the very first topic for us. Well, before we move on to the next one, Mobile Water is also one of our sponsors. They are asking you to make the right choice by choosing their Mobile Water 20-liter bottles. Mobile Water 20-liter bottles. It's an instant refill door-to-door delivery service. Give them a call right now to 0244 650 939 0244 650 939, and they will instantly supply those 20-liter water bottles to you. Or you can visit them at Tema Headlight Industrial Area. At Tema Headlight Industrial Area behind McBaron Hotel, Aplau Road. Don't always forget to drink Mobile Water because it is unique in every way. And also, TT Brothers has been our longest sponsor. Of course, I would like to recommend to you the Anchor Tea Premium Malt, Anchor Tea Premium Malt, and also Tango range of fruit juices. They are all canned. Try them out today. They are one of our sponsors. My name is Sana Nobosho. It's Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. Let's move on to second topic. But before I do that, let me just go through a couple more of the messages on Facebook. There are tons of them that I need to go through. This one from Citizen Mark Gani says the academia said nothing when they formed terrorist group. They said nothing when courts were attacked. They said nothing when the EC boss was sacked unconstitutionally. They said nothing when banks were collapsed. Why are they making noise? Now it's their turn now to be shut down. They are benefiting from the caricature they have helped to create. A couple more of the messages. And Ekan McLean Erickson says, Senna, good morning to you and my most reputed, most brilliant, most revered Mississippi brainy communicator, Comrade Mutala Ibrahim. Senna, I wouldn't talk much, but just to say it rightly, Ghana is in a complete disguised democracy in this current dispensation. Letitia Fowler says, who would want to deprive their beloved citizens of academic advancement? Those responsible do not have a love for Ghana. They only love themselves. They love power and control and not true democracy. Don't they want Ghana to shine? After all, she is a star. Roland Atiko says that, good morning, Sana. I can tell you Ghana's fourth republic is going to break down, will be broken down by Mr. Nana Addo and his MPP government in the years to come. Watch out, Ghanaians. You guys will wake up one day and begin to cry. Simon Achufuga says, Sana, once again, my regards to you and your distinguished panel members. Ghana is now being ruled by a dictator, not a president. I am very, very sad because the greater part of the voting populace in Ghana will not understand all these issues before going to cast their votes in 2020. If Ghanaians don't wake up early to out the doctor and his cohorts, Ghana will be doomed forever. And Atete says, clueless government, putting people at the wrong places without the technical know-how. How can you put a dentist in charge of our education, a chartered accountant at the health ministry? Nanado, do you listen at all? Your days are numbered. Little kids in the northern region of our country are writing in the sand. In fact, using sand as their books, and your priority is to build a national cathedral. It's so pathetic, and we Ghanaians are really sorry for ourselves because we didn't listen to Nana Kofi Kumsen. Papa Romeo T says that it is all about the forces of light and the forces of darkness. The light shall always overcome the darkness, no matter what. Do not be dismayed, comrades. A couple more. Ebokwashi says, well, he says he's meaning this for, he has sent this for us to laugh, and he says for President, just for you to laugh, for President Mahama constructed the circle interchange. Did it win him an election? No. For Ghanaians, it's about their day-to-day jobs and lives and family lives. After all, we live but once, and we don't eat rolls and overflies. Exactly what the president said when he was in opposition. Ghanaians will give him his own words to eat as a humble pie. Ishmael Sanko says, I'm totally impressed by this guest. He actually knows and understands the issues affecting African universities. I guess he was referring to Dr. Augustine Teria. Yakubu Alassan says, what we want is electronic counting. The manual is the creation of vigilantism. Very simple. Let us all ask for electronic counting. Well, so those are just some of the messages you are sending to me. Teacher Constitution in Wiamuases says, Asedu Nketia and the NDC are not ready to ban vigilantism, so parliamentarians should be quick and pass the bill on vigilantism into law. We should just give Nanado and his MPP government just 24 years, and they will make Ghana like USA and the UK. So those are just some of the messages you are sending to us. We're moving on to the next topic that has to do with the bill against vigilantism, and then there's also moves to organize that forum that was proposed by the president. Let me go to Comrade Wilson.
Okay, Senna. The issue of vigilantism is nothing new. Even on this table, It's nothing new. We've discussed this over and over. And so I want to just assume that this is an extension of what we've been discussing over the past period. And to also indicate that this is my position as far as vigilantism is concerned has been very clear, and I have always made a strong position on that. I'll come to my position at the latter part of my submission in a form of reiterating what I have said over the past years. Violence in any form is not to be accepted. Indeed, in an era where we all have decided to be bound by a supreme document known as the Constitution and the other laws, like the Criminal Code and the Criminal Acts and all that, it is important for us to always seek refuge in the law, other than taking the laws into our own hands. And that is why I have indicated that violence or vigilantism, indeed the acts arising out of vigilantism, which is contrary to laws or the existing laws, are acts that need not be encouraged, or they are acts that need not be seen in any form. I want to start by first, if you give me just a second, I want to start by first looking at what brought us to this stage and why we will even want to think that we need a bill, or we need a law, or we need an act. If you look at the past periods, particularly after this Ayawaso election, it was very clear that the violence that characterized what transpired over there, something that was supposed to be a peaceful election, we all condemned it, and we came out with a commission of an inquiry. Indeed, the intention and the purpose of the commission of inquiry was to find the truth as to what really transpired. And in doing so, we needed to, after finding out the truth, we needed to identify those who perpetrated the illegal acts, and for us to find a way of applying the laws on them. Interestingly enough, after the inquiry's sitting, they presented a report to the president, or to the presidency, and as we speak, we do not have an idea of what that report contains. What is so hurting is the fact that the sitting by the committee or the commission of inquiries is a sitting that was sponsored using the public purse, using a portion of our taxes to sponsor them. And so it was just appropriate that after individuals have done a certain work that had an effect on the monies that you and I have been paying to the state, it would have just been appropriate for us to know the contents of what the report is. And after knowing the content, it would have just been appropriate for us to also identify whether or not there were some individuals who took the law into their own hands. And if they did, then we'll be seeing, or we will have to see the law taking its effect. Unfortunately, we haven't seen such a thing. It was in this process when the president decided to, in pursuing his mandate, constitutionally provided mandate, to go to Parliament and to go and give us the State of the Nation's address. And in the process of giving the State of the Nation's address, he indicated that he wants us to disband vigilante groups and propose that the NDC and the MPP should have a meeting and give an ultimatum, and said that if a meeting is not being successful after 2 weeks, there's going to be a bill which he will present to Parliament. And if the bill is passed, we are going to have the disbandment of vigilante groupings. Now, in all this process, what kept ringing in my mind is this, that indeed we are confirming every now and then that we live in a country where leaders seem not to be so serious with the forward move or the forward march of this country. You know the number of laws that we have in this country. The problem we have in this country are not the absence of laws. The problem we have in this country is just our inability to have institutions that can enforce the laws. I have gone through the memorandum accompanying the bill, and it says the object of the bill is to disband political party vigilante groups and prescribe acts of vigilantism in the country. Now, that is the object. The rationale for this object makes reference to recent happenings. It says recent public elections, including by-elections held in the Fourth Republic, have been characterized by violence, particularly by-elections held in the following constituencies: Akwitia, Etiwa, Triponi. So the reason for us having this bill, which has the object of disbanding vigilante groups, is because we've been having violence or violent acts in almost all our electoral processes. Now, that is the first one. The second object, or the second reason for having this, is this, having the bill, is this. It says the increase in the use of land guards and its attendant violence across the country is another worrying phenomenon that threatens the right to own property, lives, and liberty. So the bill also takes into account the need to ensure that citizens are not deterred from. Now, before I even get to that, so the second rationale or second object of this is to ensure that we disband what's the name? Land guards. Now, funny enough, if you look at these two things, the question you ask yourself is this: Sana, do we have any law that legalizes violent acts? I don't think there's any. So that there's no law that says that where you apply illegal force or illegal violence, you engage in illegal violent acts, it is lawful. There's nothing like that. The bill says it is thus necessary to outlaw the use of land guards. In using the word outlaw, you are communicating to us that we have a law that legalizes land guards. You see the difficulty with the bill that is being presented. Now, the bill applies to a person who participates in the activities of a vigilante group that is associated, related, connected, or affiliated to a political party, a political party officer, a political party member, a person who acts as a land guard, and a person who engages in other acts of vigilantism. Coming together to form a vigilante group, there is no law that says that it is illegal. Indeed, if you look at our 1992 Constitution, Article 3, it actually encourages the formation and organization of such groupings. What it doesn't do is that it frowns on the illegal acts of those organizations. Say that if we live in a community and we decide to form a watchdog group or committee, the Constitution encourages us to do so. Now, in the process, after forming such a group, if we decide that we are using the group to terrorize people in the community, it becomes illegal, and we have laws that deals with that. The Constitution, again in Article 3, tells you that it is illegal for anyone to prevent a fellow citizen from engaging in political activities. It is illegal for anyone to prevent a fellow citizen from exhibiting his or her rights with regards to electoral processes. So what it means is that if today we are going to have an election, and then I come to the grounds and say, now you decide to prevent me from casting my votes, you deny me of my votes being counted, it becomes illegal and you need to be arrested and you are supposed to face the law. These are provisions and laws that already exist. These are things that we already have in our books. Now, if you go further, it says clause 9 of the bill that is being presented. It says that the clause 9 empowers the minister to make regulations, and here the minister is being referred to as the Minister of Justice, to make regulations which are necessary for the effective implementations of the bill. In other words, the bill is also providing or giving powers, extra powers that I spoke against, into the hands of one person, a minister. And it doesn't even give the limitations and the frameworks. It just gives the powers wholesale to the Minister of Justice at any given point in time to make any commendations, any proposal, to make any necessary regulations to ensure that this bill, when passed into law, is effectively executed. Now, mind you, the one who appoints the Minister of Justice is a politician. Is the president actually of any given point in time. So the effectiveness of this bill, if it is passed into law, will largely depend again on the minister and by extension the president of the day. What it means again is that we are adding extra powers to the powers already put in the hands of the president. So now, I'm told that it is a crime for any individuals coming together affiliated to any political party, and that is what the bill says, to A, provide protocol and security services at events of the political party. B, to provide protocol and security services for a political party member and a political party officer. It becomes illegal. In other words, the very moment I form a political party, or I belong to a political party, and in this case the PNC, and I decide to bring together a group of guys, and we decide that we want to give internal security, ensure that there's internal security in my party. Activities going on, there's internal security. This bill says that it becomes illegal. But since when did it become illegal for us as citizens to protect ourselves? Since when did it become illegal for us as citizens? Because I even know that the police encourages citizens to be extra vigilant and take their personal security carefully and seriously. So why then should we come out and say that we are going to present a bill that is going to make illegal that which the Constitution encourages us to do? The problem, and the fundamental problem, is not the vigilante groupings or the land guards, because those are just names. When I form a group and I give it whatever name, vigilante group, Christian group, whatever name, the name doesn't really matter. What matters is what the group engages in itself in. And so I can decide to form a group and call it non-groups or Roman Fathers groups. At the end of the day, if that group decides to take arm and start robbing persons, it becomes an illegal thing. And that persons in that group need to be arrested. Why? Is it just the name vigilante group that we want to ban? So what happens if a group of people come together and engage in the same thing and refuse to call themselves vigilante groups? To give that title vigilante group. The problem we have, and that is where I see the hypocrisy in government that we've been having over the past, where we try to play the ostrich, where we see that this is the main problem. Instead of us tackling it from the roots, we decide to do a fire service approach to it. We decide to bandage it, creating the impression that it doesn't exist. And the very moment we cover it and we do not see it, we think that it doesn't exist. The fundamental problem in this country is our inability. And so common sense will tell you that it is not the disbandment of vigilante groupings that will prevent electoral violence. What is the rationale? Per the memorandum, the rationale is that we want to ensure that we reduce or we eradicate electoral violence. And you see, in eradicating electoral violence, you don't need to disband or ban or what have you of vigilante groupings. That is not the solution. And so if indeed we are so committed, and the president is committed and really wanted us to do this, you see, all that is happening now, it is just an avenue to cover up what really took place at Ayawaso election, or during the Ayawaso election. Till date, we've not been able to arrest even one person, to let the person face the law. Till date, we are not even aware of the contents of the report that came out of the Commission of Inquiry sitting. Now, if we don't know the contents, we've not been able to identify anyone. There's a by-election, I think in Chereponi, where a man was seen, a civilian guy was seen, shooting, giving warning shots in the air. I think his name is Red or whatever, forgotten. He was arrested. A week or two, he was made to go. I remember after that, we had a stakeholders meeting which involved the police. And I raised the question of what has happened to that particular guy. The policeman present said, look, this guy was arrested. in the process of prosecuting, preparing him to face the law, we received an instruction from above that we should discontinue the case. That is just one example. It's a by-election. There are other places that you can think and talk of. The problem is that, one, if we do not strengthen our institutions and give particularly the police that power and the authority to enforce the existing laws that we have, we can enact millions of laws every second. Ghana will still be where it is. And see, if we are saying that the object, as I have read, of this bill is to prevent electoral violence, then look, Senator, I am saying on authority that this bill will not have that effect.
Okay.
Now, I'm saying on authority that this bill, if indeed our object as a nation is to prevent electoral violence, we don't need to disband vigilante groupings, because as I mentioned, in 2000 there was no vigilante groupings, but still we had electoral violence. The existing laws, let's see how we can implement them.
Thank you. Comrade.
Well, Sen, I think that a lot has been said on the content of the bill, so I won't venture into that. What is important is why this bill. Is it that we don't have existing laws that prohibit and deal with people who are engaged in some of these acts? Is it a case that the existing laws are not strong enough, they don't bite enough, the extent to which people would want to engage in some of such illegal acts and go scot-free? Or is it also a case that government thinks that those existing laws are outdated, outmoded, and for which reason we need to look at new laws? I think that my response to these questions, and I believe that to many of your listening public, is that no, we have existing laws. Is that no, we have laws that can take care of these unfortunate incidences, and that we just need to ensure that there is full implementation without a respect of a person or group of persons in the very existing laws that we have. You know, I would assure you something. The reason why Parliament is being called under a certificate of agency is because they want to pass the law before making public the Emil Short's commission that investigated the terror that was unleashed on the Ghanaian people by the NPP and the President of the Republic of Ghana. As we sit today, we are being told that the reports were actually presented to His Excellency the President. Why are they keeping it? Because they know that laws won't take retrospective effect.
Sure.
So if there are consequences in the report that was submitted to His Excellency the President, once this law is passed, before a decision is taken, I believe the clauses in the law or in the bill would have absolved those people. The President can't prosecute those gentlemen. He can't do that. He won't attempt to do that. So that is the first reason. The other reason is that there is that desperate attempt to make the President and the MPP government appears as though what happened at Ayawaso West Wagon was normal, and to equalize other happenings and other by-elections that we have had. We need to be very clear that what happened at Ayawaso West Wagon can never, under any circumstance and under any imagination, be compared to what happened at Itua, what happened at Cherpany, what happened at Talensi. Because I have listened to that hypocritical section of a Ghanaian populace who masquerade as neutrals, yet they walk and sleep in the corridors of power, who desperately tried to compare Etiwa, Talensi, Cherpany with what happened at Ayawaso. Condemnable as those incidences may be or may appear, unacceptable as they may be, they have no space in our body politics and our democratic dispensation. What happened at Yewa's Talensi and Cherkpeni have no space, no place in our democratic governance and processes. However, they are completely different, either in form or in shape, with what happened at Yewa's West Wagon. In the case of Talensi, Cherkpeni, and Etiwa, these were NDC and MPP party activists who engaged in an act that can be condemned democratically. It was NDC MPP party activists. And the security had the responsibility of intervening to ensure that it didn't degenerate. As to whether they did that effectively or not is another matter. By the way, the then candidate Nanado boasted the violence they unleashed on innocent Ghanaians at Etua in his infamous statement, Etua Kura Ichiromu Bibi Kakra. So this was what happened in those three places. Now, the reason why it is different from what happened at Ayawasu, in the case of Ayawasu West Wagon, it wasn't openly NDC MPP party activists who clashed. It was a terror group formed by the president of the Republic of Ghana, masquerading as members of national security or security operatives, wielding guns which contained bullets bought by the taxpayers' money, and unleashing the terror on innocent electorates who came to demonstrate their democratic and constitutional right. And that is the reason why we need to insulate the two. They are not the same. And let's get that very, very clearly. So there is that attempt to make everybody think that what happened at Ayos was like what happened at Etua, Cherkpeni, and no. In those incidences, we never had national security operatives or people moving with police officers who were unleashing terror on innocent electorate. I have condemned those incidences. They have no space in our electoral process or democratic, processes. But this is completely different. Now look at the clause in that proposed bill, or in that bill, because it's been submitted, I think, late in Parliament. A clause that says that you will not have the right to assemble for the purposes of what? Maintaining either security. You know what the NPP is trying to do? The NPP is trying to decapacitate other political parties, particularly the NDC, of organizing to provide internal security to man the NDC's activities and our electoral processes and elections, so that they won't also do that. They will do that through the same process they did at Ayawasu. All their terror groups who were trained by those terrorists from South Africa have been indeed added. They have been, what's the name? The word I will even use. Integrated into the national security. So they will come under the guise of providing security as state responsible security, using state uniform, and legally possessing arms to unleash terror for the interest of the MPP in the election. That is what they are trying to do. That is precisely what they are trying to do. So if they come out and say that, oh, Delta Force, invisible forces are all gone, but the so-called SWAT of the national security will be existing. So on the day of the elections, they give them the same uniforms, or they can even give them police uniforms. They can do that. And ask them to go man polling stations and monitor the electoral processes in the name of providing security for and on behalf of the state, when in actual fact their ultimate objective will be to unleash violence on other political parties to steal the MPP interest. The NDC should wake up. Our leadership in parliament should wake up. Do we need any other law to stop an illegality? The existing laws provide that. That is what they are doing. And if this thing goes through, we are doomed. That is the fact. If it was MPP people who clash with NDC, then you can say that yes, we may do this. Yeah. But these were people who did that in the name of national security. So if you find any of them holding a gun AK-47, he holds that for and on behalf of the state. When in actual fact, you know that his interest is for MPP and not the state. Because state operatives ought to be neutral in the discharge of their duties and responsibilities. But that is not what we are experiencing. So look, this thing is like a Trojan horse that is being foisted on the NDC and the Ghanaian people. And we are so gullible as a political party sometimes, we can't even see through some of these things. We can't see. We are so gullible that we can't realize that this is the agenda. You don't need to be a lawyer to read to appreciate the clauses in that bill. What has occasioned it? Why the desperation? Why is it that they are now inviting Parliament to come under a certificate of agency so that they have this law passed, after which they make available the reports of the Short Commission? As a matter of fact, all these terror groups of MPP have been trained, they have been integrated in the police service, and that is why some of us, our position was, if you want us to disband them, then tell us the number of the MPP terror that you have already integrated into the national security. And on what basis? This is a gentleman who sat there and said that he was selling phones at Circle. As a matter of fact, phone dealers said that they don't know him. And then he had the advertisement, he went through, and then he had the job. I'm saying that this is dangerous. This is a trick that they want to pull on the people of this country, particularly the National Democratic Congress. That is what they are doing. In any case, will they come and tell us that these people, we are taking all of them off, the training they have already given them, the arms they have given them? But for this thing, we wouldn't have known what the NDC agenda was. So the earlier, honestly, sometimes some of us get extremely frustrated, to be very honest, about some of the inactions taken by the NDC. To be very honest with you. Look, the MPP is a political party. If you tell them that your father has kicked a bucket, they don't appreciate it. Unless you tell them your father is dead. That is the kind of political party. Look, these are people who think that they were created to govern this country. As a matter of fact, they see any other person given the opportunity by God and the people of this country to rule as a fluke. So when you are dealing with them, you think that you deal with them in what? You had Sami Awuku who went somewhere in the north and said that they want to realign the activities of their vigilante groups. What does he mean by realigning? He's not talking about disbanding. In any case, how on earth could anybody compare the Delta Force, the Invisible Forces, the Bulgar Bulldogs with Azoka Boys? Has Azoka Boys ever unleashed any violence on any state agency or institution? Once someone should give us the evidence. Have you ever heard of even their activities until during elections? And have they ever gone to attack anybody with guns? No. So this is the huge trick they are trying to pull on us. If I can comment briefly on the Sino Hydro, maybe 2 minutes. The president was in Tamale. There was a jamboree. A sword cutting was done. And I was shocked that the NDC engaged in the Kaswa interchange. And then we spent about $250,000 with 4 interchanges. And we had the roads construction all combined over 50 kilometers. Yet the MPP said that was huge, unacceptable amount of money that was spent. The president goes to cut sword when nothing of that project has been done. My understanding of cutting sword is that before a serious president will go and cut sword, you would have concluded even works on the project, the designs and everything would have been done. And in most cases, the contract would have even been awarded and the president goes there with the contractor. We don't have anything like that under the circumstance. Absolutely nothing. We are not even sure when we're getting the money. The other time I told one of my MPP communicators, and as incompetent as they are, when I said that the money was not available, he said, you think that the monies are going to be paid into? I said, no, when we talk about the money not available, we are not just talking about fiscal cash, but the absolute commitment that this indeed resources and the contract is supposed to be. Nothing like that. And I listened to the president and I was flabbergasted, honestly, that His Excellency the President advanced the argument that is advanced by a lot of the super incompetent NPP communicators. And the argument is that we are not paying for the the projects. And the president also makes that statement. And I wonder whether indeed this is the kind of president or Nanado that people touted as the most intelligent politician in Ghana. Look, you have natural mineral resources. Someone, and you see the words they said it's a butter. So in butter you are not paying. You have natural resources. You want the Chinese to have access to our natural resources. And then they give you loan. They give you money to execute projects in the name of the bauxite that is buried on the ground. And by extension, you think that you are not paying. You are not paying. You are paying by the resources they will be exploiting. And they advanced this argument, and people actually believed that, the government is not paying. As if China has become Father Christmas, that they go about giving monies to anybody. So I am wondering the haste. Now, my expectation is that before you cut sword, the euphoria, the enthusiasm, the joy that people have should not take you more than 2 months for contractors to be on site. Nothing like that has happened. And thank God someone sent a text message that we have seen that in the pineapple factory in Central Region, that the place has become, is it Akrantier? My tree is not that. Nkrantier, right? The bush, whatever, that is found there. So I'm saying that you don't go and do that, and you took the entire state, just like they did at the Central Region. I would be very happy to see such projects executed. And you listen to some of the MPPs communicated, and as if like it's a huge privilege that doing the people of Tamale by going to do what states and political parties and governments are elected to do. I mean, it's amazing, as if like it's a privilege. It is the right of the people of Tamale and anywhere in Ghana to also benefit from government's project. But you listen to what Joe FM, the interview and interactions they had with some residents of Tamale, and almost all of them said, look, overheads or interchanges are not our priority. Our priorities are that we don't have potable water to drink. Tamale has expanded, the population has increased, the extent to which the water that was provided under the PNDC, NDC no longer suffices the people of Tamale. Ghana Secondary School, my alma mater, the students are still struggling with kettle to drink water. These are issues that the people of Tamale raise. So they are not saying that we don't need that, but we're saying that under the circumstances, we would have preferred that you do this. So I pray and hope that the money actually comes, and I pray and hope that these projects are executed. There are a lot of abandoned road projects in the north. But let me make this last submission on the same point. If you take the Tamale-Karga road, and I know this road very well because it passed through Nantong constituency. I was the MP. And we take from Karga to Gushegu. The Karga to Gushegu road, the contractor is actually working on that road, yet it's part of the Sino project. The same road. So I'm wondering then which other contracts are these? And that contract was awarded by NDC. They started executing the contract. As a matter of fact, the contractor has not been paid. Yet that same road is part of this project. So if this is not a trick, this government is pulling on us. What else?
Look.
Thank you, Senator. How much time do I have for this?
Just speak.
No, it's a
Well,
serious
so
question.
10 minutes.
2 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Perhaps I've already spoken a bit about the fact that Ghanaian people are confronted with the rule of a despot who has enough zombies in parliament to pass any whim into law. But perhaps next to that, the greatest threat to us is the political incompetence of the NDC. And the comment that Kwame Mutala has just made are clear testimony to that. Because right here on this show, you had an MP who appears to be on all fours with the vigilantism bill, so-called. Right? That, beyond I don't really waste my time on our president, saying that he's a known quantity. He's been a con artist from day one, at least in his political life. He's been a thug. He used thuggery to take charge of the MPP. And we saw it. Right? So these are not new matters. But it's clear that the biggest danger to us now is the ineptitude and incompetence of the political opposition. And why do I say this? The background to all of this is the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election, right? Ahead of this election, the government had intelligence. You know, by-elections tend to be referenda, broadly speaking, on the acceptability of government. And the intelligence suggested that they might likely lose. And that would be bad PR for all the stuff that they've been doing since day one. And so it must not be allowed to happen. So they set out on a voter suppression operation. And who do they use? They use the MPP militia that have been allowed to be organized by candidate Nana Addo as leader of the opposition, then using the broad base that he had no confidence in the police. So under the supervision of an NDC government, he subverts our constitution, breaches our laws, imports foreign personnel, mercenaries. He raises to trace and train an armed group. Our government does not prosecute him. The South Africans are arrested and deported. So you are brought into being a monster, a party militia, illegal, subversive of our constitution. Nana Addo wins power. What does he tend to do? He begins to set up a parallel national security architecture for the MPP militia. He appoints a Minister of State for National Security. Okay? Masquerading perhaps sometimes as a deputy to the Minister for National Security, but he's no deputy. He has a separate track direct in the Flagstaff House, Jubilee House, reports directly to the President. Mind you, the chain of command that led to the violence in Ayawaso West Wogon by the MPP militia, dressed up as police, started from the President. They thought they could get away with it, but for the coverage of the media, by and large, media that was in their corner. So this brought global attention to what was going on. So they set up the Emil Short Commission of MPP sympathizers and retirees, so that they could take political responsibility away from the President and take the heat off him. And that appears to have worked very well. And I hate to do this, but to my comrade Wilson, the Milshot Commission was not set up to establish the truth. It was not intended to establish the truth.
It was a cover up. Just to cover up, yeah.
Well, so that's a retraction from your previous position.
No, at least that was the intention. That's what they said.
It was never the intention.
No, that's what they told us.
No. Please, in politics, what people say, you have to take notice. The most important thing is what they do.
I'm saying what they said.
Sorry, and I said don't be misled by what they say, because then you're on the wrong footing. I'm saying that it was never intended to establish the truth. It was intended to divert attention and to take the heat off the president. And one thing I've just noticed, when the NPP was in opposition, that's a very effective opposition, they made sure that every ill was on the head of the president. Now look at the NDC. They spend their time hunting agents of the president. They spend their time hunting agents and assigns of the president. Lately, they've been spending their time on Baumia. I said, what is wrong with this, my friends? Don't look anywhere else. All of this was to take attention and take the heat off the president. And the processes that they've set in motion for this quote-unquote vigilantism bill says that they have succeeded. It is not surprising that you have a political opposition willing to go along with them, at least if we have to go by what Dr. Terry has said. But really, now as president, our president is superintending over the expansion and the maintenance of the MPP militia using public funds. They'll remain untouched and they'll be deployed for the purposes of the 2020 elections to ensure that the MPP and he retain power. That's the bottom line. Whilst disabling all possible centers of opposition. And at least you have a section of the NDC which is in opposition cheering them on. But this thing started from the very beginning when they were able to achieve equalization with the MPP militia out of the picture and in reserve. So it's even strange that when Dr. Teya started mentioning the groups, he started with Azoka Boys and whatever. Yeah. So I asked myself, what really is wrong with the NDC? But I know what is wrong with them. Okay? It's ideological confusion, which masquerades as social democracy. And these are all the results of that. And that is the biggest danger we face now. Because you know what? The hapless working people of our country think that they have a defender. They think that they have someone who is championing their cause, when in fact they don't. Because this toxic situation has been created through their complicity. The real issues that we should address is the climate of intolerance and the culture of impunity, this toxic mix. That's really the source of our problem. It's not me. Many others have said that we have all the laws needed to deal with criminality. We don't need new laws. Okay? But maybe one other aspect that has to be stated that has never been said. Because I've heard, over the past few months, I've heard comments by various police people suggesting that their hands are tied. Okay? And perhaps going back to this oft quoted but misleading statement made by Obama when he visited our country, that we need strong institutions, not strong men. Sorry, Mr. President. You need strong people to build strong institutions.
Okay.
And we need our police people, professional people, to be able to stand up and do the right thing. Right? To grow the balls to tell persons who issue wrongful orders that we will not follow them.
Okay.
So they cannot hide their cowardice behind an overbearing president or despot.
Okay.
Right?
Okay,
that they must be able to stand up and be counted. And that there will be people who will be out there who can support them. It may take a few casualties, but we'll build institutions that have character and strength. Because I'm tired of just hearing people say that, look, our hands are tied. What nonsense.
Okay. Look, unfortunately, we would have to close.
You see, that's the problem. I asked you how much time I have for this.
Well, the time I gave you is way past.
Because I've been ready to speak on this matter for a very, very long time.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have taken too much of the sports time, and they are on standby. So thank you very much. Well, so you heard Dr. David Percy, who's